Prague, Czech Republic, September 7th, 1996. 8:47 p.m. 20,000 people stood in Letná Park Stadium, packed shoulder to shoulder. The largest crowd Michael Jackson had ever performed for in Europe. Maybe the largest crowd he'd ever performed for anywhere. The History World Tour, named after his most recent album. Massive production, military-themed stage design, elaborate pyrotechnics, video screens, 3 stories tall. This wasn't just a concert, this was a spectacle. The crowd had been waiting for hours, energy building, anticipation at a breaking point. Then, at exactly 8:47 p.m., the stadium lights went down. Darkness. 120,000 people erupted, screaming. The sound was deafening, a wall of noise that could be heard miles away. The intro music started. Deep bass, military drums, building, getting louder. Spotlights swept across the crowd. Video screens showed marching soldiers. Historical footage, building tension. Then the stage platform began to rise from below. Smoke poured across the stage. Lights flashed, and Michael Jackson appeared. Standing on the rising platform, arms at his sides, head slightly down, aviator sunglasses covering his eyes, black fedora, black military jacket with gold emblems, white shirt, black pants. Completely still, the platform reached stage level, locked into place. Michael didn't move. The intro music was still playing, building to a crescendo. The moment when Michael would burst into the first song, but he didn't. He just stood there. The crowd screamed louder, thinking this was part of the show, part of the drama. 10 seconds passed. Michael didn't move. 20 seconds. Still nothing. 30 seconds. The crowd's screaming shifted slightly, from pure excitement to something else. Confusion mixed with awe. Michael Jackson stood like a statue, not moving, not acknowledging the crowd, not reacting to anything. Just standing. 1 minute passed. The crowd was in full hysteria now. 120,000 people screaming at one motionless figure. Security teams were already moving through the crowd. People were fainting, collapsing, overwhelmed. The medical teams stationed around the stadium were on alert. They'd been warned. Michael's concerts always had fainting, but this was different. People were passing out just from looking at him stand there. 2 minutes. Michael still hadn't moved. Not a finger. Not a shift of weight. Nothing. His breathing was so controlled that from the audience he looked like he might not be breathing at all. The crowd's noise was constant, unbroken, a sustained roar that human throats shouldn't be able to maintain, but they did, because they couldn't look away. 3 minutes. Stadium security was now reporting medical emergencies across multiple sectors, people fainting, some collapsing completely. Crowd crush starting in areas closest to the stage. As people pushed forward, the security chief radioed to the stage manager, "We have mass fainting, should we stop?" Stage manager, "Stand by." Michael knew the emergencies were happening. He could see security moving, see people being carried out, but he didn't move. This was part of it, part of what he was demonstrating. 4 minutes. Some people in the crowd started crying, not from sadness, from overwhelming emotion. The tension of watching Michael stand there was breaking something in them. Others were screaming his name. "Michael, Michael, Michael." He didn't respond. 5 minutes. A woman in the front row collapsed. Her friends tried to hold her up, but couldn't. Security rushed in, carried her out. Michael saw it, still didn't move. The video screens on either side of the stage were showing close-ups of Michael's face. His expression was neutral, almost serene. Behind the sunglasses, his eyes were invisible. He looked like a statue, a monument, not a human being. 6 minutes. The psychological effect on the crowd was intensifying. Some people couldn't handle it anymore, started leaving, not because they wanted to, but because their bodies couldn't take the tension. Others pushed closer, desperate to be nearer to him, to understand what was happening. Security was now reporting critical crowd density in front sections. Risk of stampede. Stage manager radioed again. "Michael, we're getting dangerous crowd conditions." Michael had an earpiece. He heard it, didn't respond, didn't move. 7 minutes. This was longer than anyone had expected. The opening was supposed to be dramatic, yes. But this was beyond dramatic. This was something else. In Michael's mind, time was moving differently. He was aware of every second, but he was also in a meditative state. Completely focused, completely still. He'd practiced this, trained himself to stand motionless, to control every muscle, every breath. But he'd never done it for this long, in front of this many people. And he was discovering something. The longer he stood still, the more powerful the effect. The crowd wasn't getting bored, they were getting more intense. Because humans aren't built to handle sustained stillness. We're built for action, for movement, for change. When someone stands completely still, especially someone famous, someone powerful, someone commanding a stage in front of 120,000 people, it breaks something in our brains. We can't process it, so we react. We scream, we cry, we faint. 8 minutes. Medical teams had now evacuated over 60 people from the stadium. Fainting, hyperventilation, panic attacks, crowd crush injuries. The Czech authorities were monitoring the situation, debating whether to stop the concert for safety. But Michael was in control. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was teaching 120,000 people a lesson about presence, about power, about the fact that you don't need to do anything to command absolute attention. You just need to be. 9 minutes. The crowd's noise had evolved again. It was no longer just screaming. It was a sustained roar. Primal, collective, like the sound of the ocean. Individual voices were lost in it. This was the voice of 120,000 people as one organism, all focused on one motionless figure. Michael felt it. The energy, the power, the connection. This was what he'd been trying to achieve. The ultimate demonstration. No singing, no dancing, no words. Just presence. 9 minutes and 30 seconds. Michael made his first movement. Slow, deliberate. He raised his right hand, reached up to his sunglasses. The crowd saw it. The first movement in over 9 minutes. The noise somehow got louder, which shouldn't have been possible. Michael removed the sunglasses. Slowly, dramatically. The video screens showed his eyes. For the first time, looking out at the crowd erupted. People who'd been standing still were now jumping, waving, crying harder. 9 minutes and 45 seconds. Michael took one step forward. Just one step. The noise was now beyond description. 120,000 people releasing nearly 10 minutes of pent-up energy in one collective explosion. Michael took another step. Then another. Then he struck a pose, arms out, signature. Michael Jackson's stance. The crowd lost their minds. 10 minutes of standing still, followed by 3 seconds of movement, and the stadium nearly collapsed from the energy. Michael finally started performing. Scream. The opening song, Janet Jackson's vocals on the track. Michael dancing. Full production kicking in. But the crowd was still recovering from the 10 minutes of stillness. Over the next 90 minutes, Michael performed a full concert. All his hits, elaborate choreography, costume changes, everything his were famous for. But everyone who was there remembers the same thing, the first 10 minutes. When Michael did nothing, and that nothing was more powerful than anything any of them had ever seen. After the concert, stadium medical teams reported final numbers. 139 people required medical attention, 87 faintings, 23 cases of hyperventilation, 19 crowd crush injuries, all within the first 15 minutes of the show, most during the 10 minutes when Michael just stood there. The Czech media covered it extensively. Michael Jackson breaks Prague record for concert attendance, also breaks record for concert-related medical emergencies. In interviews after, reporters asked Michael, "Why did you stand still for 10 minutes?" Michael smiled. "I wanted to see if I could hold their attention without doing anything, without singing, without dancing, just being there. And could you? For 10 minutes, 20,000 people couldn't look away. I think that answers the question. But people got hurt. People fainted. Michael's expression turned serious. I never want anyone to get hurt at my shows. That's why we have medical teams. That's why we prepare." But what happened wasn't about the standing still. It was about what they were feeling. "I was just showing them something about presence, about energy, about connection, which is that you don't have to do anything to matter. You just have to be, fully, completely. And people feel, they respond to that." The Prague performance became legendary. Bootleg videos circulated for years. People who weren't there claimed they were, because witnessing it was witnessing something impossible. One person shouldn't be able to hold 120,000 people captive by doing nothing, but Michael Jackson did. Other artists tried to recreate it. Some would stand still for 30 seconds, maybe a minute, in their opening, but never 10 minutes, because they couldn't. The audience would get bored, would start talking, would lose interest. But with Michael, they couldn't look away. That's not something you can learn. That's not technique. That's not training. That's presence. Pure, undeniable presence. Years later, psychologists studied the Prague performance, trying to understand the crowd response. They called it collective hypnosis. The idea that one person, through sheer force of presence, can entrance an entire crowd. But that didn't fully explain it, because Michael wasn't doing anything to hypnotize them. He was just standing there. The power wasn't in what he was doing. The power was in who he was. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, the most famous performer on earth, standing completely still, and 120,000 people couldn't take their eyes off him. That's power you can't buy, can't fake, can't manufacture. You either have it or you don't. And Michael Jackson had it, in a way that maybe no one else ever has. 10 minutes of doing nothing. That changed everything.